The West Bloomfield Lakers varsity football season has officially come to a close following a 7-25 loss at home last week Friday against the Brighton Bulldogs in the opening round of the MHSAA Division I football playoffs. Here with more about a game of short-lived ups and very hard-hitting downs, as well as a mostly successful season overall for the Lake Show, is our Laker football color analyst, Matt Catoni. Matt, thanks for being here.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Glad to have you on to talk about Laker football. I'm not so glad that it's the final time we'll be doing that for this regular season and playoff campaign. A short-lived playoff campaign for the West Bloomfield Lakers. All the work that went into getting that first home game didn't quite go their way, and the calling card of that competition really was the defensive attack from the Bulldogs.
Yeah, and it was a really close game in the first half. The Bulldogs scoring a touchdown with 11 seconds left to take the 10-7 lead into half. For the most part, the Lakers defense was equally as stout as the Bulldogs defense, but missing Travis Robertson, the Lakers really couldn't get anything going.
Yeah, and it was tough with the size of that defensive front, the line especially from the Brighton Bulldogs, but really that entire front seven, the scheme they put together, not having a guy that's 6'6", nearly 300 pounds, Big Ten bound with a lower leg injury in Travis Robertson, had a major impact on that Lakers team. And it seemed like as much as the Lakers offense had that boom potential all throughout the season, those big 50-plus yard runs, certainly those 50 to 60-yard touchdown passes that we saw so often, usually Carver to Willie Edwards all throughout the season, just wasn't there. From all three levels, the Brighton Bulldogs brought their A game on Friday on the defensive side.
Yeah, and the Lakers were able to get some opportunities, but the Brighton Bulldogs were able to just clasp on them right away. The Lakers in the third quarter had an opportunity to get back into the game when it's 16-7, but the Bulldogs are able to get them off the field on a 4th and 3. And that's really kind of the pivotal point in the game, because from then on, the Bulldogs just ran away from it, or with it.
And looking through the stats from this season, 123 yards on the ground, one of the fewest rushing yards for the entire season of the Lakers, looking back to week 4 at 128. Really the only other week that even comes close to rivaling how few rushing yards West Bloomfield had, a team that had been content for many weeks out of this season to run for over 200 yards. The running game shut down, and for West Bloomfield, the way that secondary was playing for the Brighton Bulldogs, without having their calling card of versatility on the offensive side, that was the magic elixir for Brighton to shut down this West Bloomfield offensive attack.
Yeah, it was kind of a nightmare scenario for the Lakers. They struggled to get the passing game going throughout the season, really. They showed some life last week, but then losing Travis Robertson, it kind of forced them to lean on a weakness this week as they weren't able to get the run game going, and it showed.
And one thing that was disrupted was the ability for Jackson Carver to make sound decisions after going through full progressions. Now, mind you, this has been a player, a junior quarterback for the Lakers, his first season as a starter on the varsity level, really his first season on the varsity level altogether, as he was injured as a sophomore third stringer last year in 2024. He, throughout the year, had shown a lot of poise in the backfield, especially under pressure, but Brighton was able to really bring that quickly and aggressively and maintain that pursuit because of how stout they were at all three levels. That definitely disrupted the passing game for West Bloomfield, too.
Yeah, as much as it disrupts the run game not having Robertson, it equally disrupts the passing game and makes life that much more hectic for a young quarterback, first-year starter in Jackson Carver. And that's really, the unfortunate aspect of this playoff game that the Lakers are going to be looking at if they had Travis Robertson, because it really was a phenomenal season for this team. But Travis Robertson was probably the best player on the offense this year, and not having him for this playoff game was huge.
No Lakers had over 21 yards receiving on Friday night. This is a team that has consistently had at least one guy that's having a breakout game, and a bunch of other players that were at least in double figures yardage-wise in the receiving corps. 79 yards passing in total for the Lakers on Friday night. That being said, still relatively efficient. Jackson Carver, 6 for 14 for 76 yards. Unfortunately, two interceptions involved in that. Jackson Carver mostly taking the offensive reps at quarterback. Jamal Shakespeare, 3 attempts at quarterback, 1 completion for only 3 yards. Really was a tale of a defensive performance for the Brighton Bulldogs. So with all that being the case, West Bloomfield eliminated from the playoffs in the pre-district round. That finishes them 1 week sooner than they finished in 2024 when they advanced to the district finals and lost to Catholic Central. Brighton will face the Shamrocks at Detroit Catholic Central on Friday this week for the district championship. So looking back on the Lakers season, they finished with 3 losses. That's the same number of losses they had 2 years ago when they made it all the way to the state semifinals, losing to the eventual champions in Southfield A&T. And while they're graduating 22 seniors, Matt, as you look toward the future, it looks pretty bright for this Lakers team that had a lot of those juniors and underclassmen be able to step into starting roles, to heavy reps roles, and show out in this season. Lots of promise going into 2026.
Yeah, especially on the defensive side of the ball and the defensive line. I mean, one guy that comes to mind is Jamar Ray. He was phenomenal towards the end of the year, and he did not just a great job setting the edge, but just, winning his one-on-ones and just getting off the ball so fast that opposing tackles didn't have a chance to stop him.
And let's not also discount the secondary coming back next year. Yes, they're going to lose Will Espy and Jamal Shakespeare, so their safeties are going to be going away. They're going to have to replace that production. They've been able to replicate that throughout their JV and freshman programs coming up year in and year out. This seems to be a place that even in recent years, with departures of people like Coach Dickerson, who's a renowned defensive backs coach across the U.S., still having Coach Cam and others in place to coach these defensive backs and that secondary has done wonders for this team. And they're bringing back 2 rock-solid cornerbacks in Christian Banks and Bryce Tillman-Jones next year. That's going to be huge for them, especially as some of these other, particularly OAA Red Division teams, start to lose some of their crop of receivers and those electric lightning-in-a-bottle quarterbacks.
Yeah, and really those 2 corners you named were phenomenal. Again, a lot like Ray at the end of the season. They got better as the weeks went on and they got more playing time. So going into next year, you have really 3 cornerstones for this defense that are going to give you the opportunity to make plays and get your hands on the football and put the offense in good positions.
Josh Forrest also coming back next season, a defensive back, had a great season for West Bloomfield. Iman Lewis at linebacker picked it up also. You mentioned Jamar Ray. He had a big season, particularly that second half, really stepped into his role. Could be that next in line behind guys like Brandon Davis-Swain, guys like Mike Williams at the defensive edge, having a huge impact, and follow up Jeremiah Benson, who had a fantastic career at West Bloomfield High School. But the cornerstone of that defensive line going into next year has to be Tristan Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot. They're going to continue to have a lot of size on that defensive line, and that's going to be the biggest thing. That's and the secondary is going to be the biggest beneficiary of their defensive front. Having a guy like Tristan Hunter, who we saw 2 weeks ago get his hand on the football 3 times in the passing games, almost causing turnovers, whether it being a fumble or an interception. But having 2 guys, one on the inside, one on the outside, and Ray, like that is going to be an immense advantage for the Lakers going into next year.
And other players like Bryce Chandler also coming back next year. One of those players that's going to be playing probably mostly at safety because of his size, his ability in the defensive front. He can put him at a linebacker position. You can put him at that nickel corner. You can put him at the safety position. He's so versatile, and he's had some big games also this year. So defense looking really good. And you can't discount the offensive side either, bringing back a few key players on the offensive line, but especially having a second year of Jackson Carver, who's going to be ever motivated after a not so fantastic last few weeks of the season with those 5 interceptions, where otherwise throughout this entire season, regular season and playoffs, outside of those interceptions, virtually flawless.
Yeah, and having Shannon Rochon back next year as well, that's going to be kind of the connection I feel like the Lakers are going to go to a lot. We saw Rochon kind of get on the field more the second half of the season, not just necessarily making plays with the football in his hands, but just getting open and getting targets more than really any other full-blown receiver in this offense had all year. And that's going to be something to see how the Lakers expand upon going into next season.
Yeah, Keegan Hickey likely to be one of those guys that will take on a bigger role in the backfield, and we'll probably see Cameron Hall be a little bit more of a fusion between running back and wide receiver next year, as he was mostly in those jet sweeps. Maybe they'll put him more as that Will Espy speed back next season, although Espy a little bit larger in stature at this particular time than Cameron Hall, with about let's say, looking at the roster, a slight difference in size going into next season, about 30 pounds. That being said, sophomore for Cam Hall, going to put on that size over the summer, going to get back to work, and he had a fantastic year also. Could be another key player for this West Bloomfield Lakers team. That being said, 22 seniors is a big loss for this team. So as you're looking toward next season, as these players now get a little bit of an earlier start to their off-season training than they maybe perhaps were anticipating, what are some of those keys you're looking for them to really hone in on over the winter, the spring, and the summer to come back next fall and maybe take over the OAA Red, with many other teams also having an exodus of senior leadership?
Really, the weight room and the film room are really the two most important things that come to mind. The weight room is really where your team is built in the offseason. And if they're able to just, maintain that physical mindset and keep on working towards that, we saw how just one offseason of focusing on that paid off this year. It'd be interesting to see if they continue that mindset in the weight room.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting offseason for the Lakers. See what happens on their front coming into next year, and who's going to take that big step forward. We saw some of those players make those big impacts in 2025, sprung the Lakers back from being a team that lost 6 games in total last season, one of those, of course, being a playoff game, and had a 2-game improvement overall in the regular season in 2025. Matt, as we look back on these past 10 weeks of Laker football, one extra than was originally given to this team at the beginning of the season with their playoff campaign, what do you believe is the underlying story of the West Bloomfield Lakers football team of 2025?
Well, I feel like it's a kind of a case of what if, because again, like I said, if they have Travis Robertson, that game on Friday goes very differently, and it's just a very unfortunate circumstance for this team because, health isn't something you can guarantee in this sport. And I feel like that's just the biggest theme is what if they had Travis Robertson? Because this team was so talented when they got to the perimeter and those ball carriers. Who knows what could have happened if they won?
Yeah, always going to be those big questions. What if, again, on the line for the West Bloomfield. Game is won and lost often in the trenches at any level of football. Definitely going to be one of those things you think about if you're a Laker faithful for years to come, much like you did a couple of years ago with that late game injury to Brandon Davis-Swain in the semifinal. Matt, appreciate you being here with us today and had a fun time calling the games with you all throughout the fall. We'll hopefully see you soon.
Yep, likewise, and thank you for having me.